Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another video. As you can tell from up there, it is another DVD review. And it is of the Shout Factory release of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. You can tell, like with Halloween 2, I have the new cover out, because I just like that cover. But like with it, it also has the old cover as an option, since I actually have the DVD in here. I'll flip it out. That's the thing I love about the Shout Factory releases, they give you that option. Sometimes I'll go with the new, sometimes I'll go with the old. In the case of both Halloween ones, I'm going with the old, with the new. Sadly, I didn't order it at the time they were doing the poster thing for it. That's probably 2 releases of posters I'd love to get. You know, maybe one day down the road I'll be able to find it at a place, but, you know, that's down the road. Now, like the previous film, this film has a lot of features. It has a making of called Stand Alone. It has interviews with Tommy Lee Wallace, the director, Tom Atkins, Stacy Nelkin, Brad Schochter, Dick Warlock, the executive producer Erwin Yablans, the director of photography Dean Cundy, the co-composer Alan Howarth, and a couple more, but those are the main ones. For the most part, the actors are proud of their work. They talk about the film in great regard, like the actors from Halloween 2 did. Give a couple making-ofs, and Atkins even believes that the film does end on a happy note after the film actually ends, that they managed to stop everything in time. And as the guy interviewing him even puts on, that's actually on camera, "You're an optimist, aren't you?" And he's like, "Yeah, my wife wouldn't say so, but yeah." Thought that was a nice little joke. And they're happy that the film has found its audience years later, because it didn't do as well as it should have. I mean, I don't think it was a flop, but I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's definitely a film that did not make as much money, mainly because people went into the film, they came out going, "Where's Michael?" So that tells me that the film did not market itself well so that people would know Michael's not in it. I know on video they have, because look at that right there. It says, it's going to be backwards on camera, but it says, "The night nobody came home." No one came home, so that tells you Michael's not in it. Now, the only person who's interviewed who really comes close to hating on the film is Yablans, because he hates the no Michael idea, and he's like, "Whose idea was it?" And he says he was against it and all that. That's the most he ever says, which I'm glad, because if he came out and actually bashed the film, like, the idea was stupid and the film was stupid, then it'd be like, alright, that's your opinion, man, but doesn't mean the film is stupid just because Michael's not in it. Because that's what, until probably the last couple years, most people that have hated the movie seem to center around that idea. I mean, I know that because I was one of them. Mainly because when I watched this film when I was a kid, it was the last of the original Halloween films I watched. Even with the marketing and stuff, after the fact, I did not know Michael was not in the movie, so the whole film I'm watching going, oh, is this one going to be when Michael shows up? Is this going to be when Michael shows up? Nope, so I was kind of disappointed as a kid. Years went by, I rewatched it, and I really enjoyed the film. It's one of those films that sometimes it takes a couple watches and sometimes years apart to actually appreciate, and I appreciate it even more with each watch. And for this video, I watched it twice because there's 2 commentaries, so watched it with both. Sadly, if there's any one complaint I have about some of the specs, new subtitle option. 2 had subtitles, this one doesn't. So basically I had to go off of past watches to know what was actually being said specifically, but even with that little nitpick, it was still fun to watch. This is something Dean Cundy said about the film, is that it has its own charm, and I have to agree with him. And part of the reason will be the actors, Wallace's direction, and of course Cundy's photography, his cinematography. He just has that look that helped with the Carpenter's films, and since Carpenter was the producer and one of the writers, even though he was uncredited for this film, definitely has that Carpenter look to it. Now, speaking of which, Wallace is the only credited writer, but he's like, that credit is crap, because it was technically written by 2 other people in addition to him, John Carpenter and Nigel Neal. Nigel Neal wrote the original script. Carpenter liked it, and about 60% of that script is in the final film. But Carpenter felt it needed some pizzazz. He rewrote it, showed it to Wallace. Wallace, he doesn't really say what his full opinion on it was, but he gives the opinion that he liked it, but it still needed a bit more, so he rewrote it. And he says that Carpenter probably was a little surprised that his protege rewrote his work. Now, Neil was not interviewed. I don't know if the guy's still alive. Probably not, but the way they talk about him, in my notes I have it that he was standoffish, which they don't describe him as that, but the way that they talk about him is like, yeah, he kind of seems like he would have been, because, as Wallace said, that with how he was, with how Hollywood had mangled his work, or how he perceived it to have mangled his work in the past, any criticism, even if it was a valid, constructive criticism, Neil would have just like taken to heart, like, oh, you hate what I did, oh. So a little standoffish in that regard. And of course they talk about the, 8 more days till Halloween theme. That it was done to London bridges, and Wallace is the voice. And even on his commentary, Wallace talks about how that came about because when they were doing like the temp stuff, he would do like certain voice stuff, and for like certain announcing thing, it turns out he had the perfect cheesy narrator voice. So by the time this film was made, it was an in-joke with everyone. So he's like, oh, I'll just do it. And apparently he also does the vocal stuff. It's just, like chipmunk stuff where he'd sing it slow and then they change the pitch and speed it up a little bit. So it's like, 8 more days till Halloween, Halloween. There's me using my higher pitch voice, but you get the idea. We're talking about that. If there's any nitpick involving the documentary, it's the same as Halloween 2. No John Carpenter. And like with that, I ask, what? I mean, he was involved with the thing. I know they did that afterwards, but he's not on this. Maybe he just doesn't have that many good stories to tell about it. I'll tell you this, if Shout Factory ever does one for Halloween 1, he better be a part of it, because if he's not, that's going to be a major BS thing. Halloween 2 he should have been a part of. Halloween 3, of the two, I can understand him not being involved in that one, since he was mainly just the producer and one of the writers of one of the earlier drafts, but Halloween 2 he should have been on. Because it's sad enough that Deborah Hill can't be a part of any of this, because she's passed away in 2005, but John Carpenter not being here? No reason for that unless he just wanted to pass on it. And then we got another Horror's Hallowed Grounds, Sean Clark. Unlike the previous one, he actually has someone from the film with him this time, and that's Tommy Lee Wallace. It's only in the town aspect later when they're in Lolita, California. And it's nice to actually have him there. And like he did a little bit with the Halloween 2 one, he does recreate a couple of shots. He does it a little bit more this time, like he recreates the opening shot of the film, running under the freeway overpass. He even recreates the ending. Stop it. Stop it! Which was funny. Apparently the town of Lolita hasn't changed much. The only major thing is that the hotel is now a private residence, so they couldn't actually go inside. Luckily Clark had some footage from a previous visit about 18 years before they did the DVD, so there's that. And that's actually what they show the phone booth, because the phone booth is gone when they did this, so they showed footage of the phone booth. It being gone, no surprise. I mean, who uses phone booths anymore? Superman's gonna be pissed. It was also filmed in other places around LA County, like Sierra Madre, California. And one of the places they use is actually not that far away from the Church from the Fog, just like with Halloween 2. Carpenter using locations that are familiar. Now, they also mentioned that part of the filming location they picked was a little homage and tribute to the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which they do mention both in the documentary and more so on the director's commentary, and a little bit of the actor's commentary. That the ending was also a little homage to that film because the director could not get the original ending he wanted, which would have been a little downbeat, so they consciously were going in that direction, which I think works. Now, I haven't seen the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers or its remake yet, so probably when I get around to that, it'll probably be the same thing as when I watched the original thing. That's like, I can see how this influenced people like Carpenter. Now on to the director's commentary. Sean Clark joins Tommy Lee Wallace for this, and they have a good rapport, good back and forth. Most of the talk is about the technical elements, and a couple times Wallace comments from an editing standpoint, like, yeah, I probably could have cut about 16 frames here, other jargon like that. Mainly from how editing has changed since the 80s and all that, but I kind of miss the 80s pacing of editing a little bit, especially for horror films. I'm probably not alone in that aspect. We talk about the filming locations. Some of it's retread from Horror's Hallowed Grounds, some of it's new other stuff, been told in a different light. Talk about the writing, stuff that they kind of talk about in this making of, with Neil, Carpenter and all that, but they don't go over much of the Carpenter stuff other than, how was he on set? Yeah, he didn't visit set that much, and as Wallace puts it, because it'd be one of those situations where he as the director would give something and the crew would look over at Carpenter and be like, you want us to do that, sir? Because he's the producer. I can kind of imagine that on Poltergeist there's probably a similar thing like that between Spielberg and Hooper, but probably early on Spielberg like, nah, if he's fine with it, he's fine, unless, something I mentioned. Then again, we're never going to know for sure because we don't have a good documentary making of that. It's just speculation. Let's see, the writing. The main thing that they mention that they joke about is like, how late was she a robot? I love the back and forth joking with that, especially once they get to the end where we know for certain she's a robot by this point. Where they joke about it, like Clark is joking about a sex bot thing, which Wallace really gets a kick out of, and they go off from there. They talk about working with the actors, how they were. They talk at length near the end about killing off children, especially during the whole scene where the one kid, little buddy, gets it. The rattlesnake comes out of his head. They mentioned that they had to cut a couple frames here and there because of the MPAA. They don't elaborate much about it other than it probably lingered a little bit too long, so it made a little bit of a more grotesque effect. And but they didn't really have any problems with it, they said, because as Wallace said, it's not like, it's a little different here than if you were to like make a film glorifying, let's say, a child molester. It's a little bit different. Wallace talks about the widescreen shots, which there's a lot of parts of the film where it's like, yeah, the widescreen really does help. He mainly comments on that, I think, because before and since he did a lot of TV work, like the other big film he's known for other than this, which would be Stephen King's It, the TV version, probably was different filming that than this. And they definitely have different looks. I have a feeling part of that is because one's filmed for TV, one's filmed for theaters, and the other difference would be the director of photography. If he had Dean Cundy filming Stephen King's It, that would have looked like an amazing made-for-TV movie. And of course, the actor's commentary, it's Tom Atkins with one of the DVD producers. I don't remember the guy's name. But he and Atkins have a good back and forth. They joke around a lot. They talk about the making of the film a lot. And at one point, Atkins talks about how he got into acting after the Navy. He joined college. And this one girl he was pursuing was into theater a lot. So eventually she gave him a thing like, you know, if you join a theater group, you could be spending a lot of time with me. So he joined acting to get the girl. Now, they didn't work out, but the acting bug had bit him, and he went from there. Now, he tells a story about Sinatra working on set with him. And I guess one day Sinatra was called to the set. It took 30 minutes for the crew to get the lighting right. They filmed the take. Sinatra went back to his dressing room while they were waiting for the next one. They're ready on set, and Sinatra says, I'll be there in 30 minutes. They'll teach him a lesson, like, if you're going to spend 30 minutes trying to get it ready before you shoot, don't call me till you're ready to actually shoot. Which I can understand that, because I've done some filming stuff, nothing like big, like what Sinatra would have done, like small stuff. The most annoying part is when you're waiting in between shots. Even as an extra or a actor that doesn't have dialogue, it's just there for background stuff. It's annoying, you know, like that. Now, for the Doritos commercial, we didn't really have that a lot. It's just that we were doing a lot of takes to get a lot of action so that the editor would have a lot of stuff to work with, which is fun. Especially the little thing me and my friend Jeff came up with where we did the little stunt thing, which sadly did not end up in the last little commercial thing, but that would have been a cool moment, especially if there was an extended commercial. But alas, we're never going to see that footage. And other stories, like Atkins talks about making the 9th configuration with William Peter Blatty. Talks about it in a negative light, which he says that probably a making of movie about that movie would be better than the movie itself, which I haven't seen the movie, but I believe I have it up on VHS somewhere. I know I got the 7th sign there, but I don't got the 9th configuration. He also talks about Lethal Weapon, how he met Shane Black through Fred Decker. Talks a little bit about Night of the Creeps. Talks a little bit how he got the job for My Bloody Valentine in 3D, which I didn't even know he was in that film, but like another reason to actually get around to watching it. And there's other stories, but those are the main ones. I don't want to spoil all of them, because as you can kind of tell from how I'm basically kissing the film's backside, as it were. If you are a fan of Halloween 3, I do recommend you get your hands on this. If you don't have it, it's on Blu-ray and DVD. I got it on DVD, because I'm one of those guys that, if it was on DVD, it's an older film like this, I prefer to get the DVD if the features are the same as the Blu-ray. And of course, this is at the time where Shout Factory was actually still giving us that option. Now it's Blu-ray all the way, which is kind of annoying, mostly for the older films, but it is what it is. At least some of them have a DVD in it as well, if you prefer to watch the DVD version of it over the Blu-ray. All the other things I mentioned, it has the trailers, TV, radio spots, and a still gallery, which if I ever get around to doing more talks on this, that should come in handy. Just put in the DVD, bring it up, copy, copy, copy. All the other thing to say is, Happy Halloween.